considering pure reason all by itself, not with divine intervention or but just how does reason itself work, understood as being the possibilities of a written language to work through true-false propositions. And similarly, so the analogy with Montmartre and the origin of the avant-garde and the cabaret experience in France, which ultimately leads to Dada, is it opens a place within bourgeois civilization for pure, now what's the word here, design. Meaning, well, just like colors and lines and the behaviors of making and performing, and of course the context for them was cabaret. They open these things as businesses, right? To say, come and watch us, make fun of the Renaissance or that kind of stuff. Let's make a joke, because that was how they pushed away. That was their contrast. They rejected it through satire and parody. But what they're getting at is just like, well, just the look and feel of stuff itself as articulate, as getting at pleasure. Remember that the goal of electricity is jouissance. The goal of electricity is pleasure, pain. It's not true, false, it's not right, wrong. It's not about that at all. It's a supplement to that. And also, Baudelaire's sort of taken to be his essay on modernism is he starts with reference to a fashion designer, whatever Guise, whatever, I forget the guy's name, right? But he sort of the Andy Warhol of his day. I mean, and there's a whole book, on architecture and fashion. But how was the avant-garde spread through the world? Well, one of the ways was through the prestige of French fashion. The whole Parisian fashion scene was, spread vanguard through the middle class. And what were they picking up on? Just on the intelligence, the legibility of line, shape, color, motion, performance. Not concepts. It's not conceptual at all. It's like, Kant had introduced the idea of a reflective category. It was a thought without a concept. I mean, it was a subjective judgment. It was judgment of taste. That's if you want the intellectual beginnings of electricity, it's right there in Kant's third critique, which is a judgment of taste. So I would make a case that that what you have, the way this metaphysics is disseminated and distributed through the civilization industrial revolution, the way we're all becoming electorate, whether we want to be or not, is through advertising, through the commodity sign, through Marx, through commerce. And so the importance of getting to the logic of this is to say, well, how do we defend ourselves if our jouissance is being manipulated by advertisers, which it is. We're like illiterate peasants being manipulated by clever landlords with their written contracts and so forth. And we own property because we have a bone knife given to us by great grandpa, and they say, well, where's your contract? I mean, that's how the writers took all the land away from the non-writers. Well, now the advertisers are taking our jouissance right from us because we don't know the language of color and shape and movement. And so there's a general electricity issue here, just like there is an issue of literacy. I mean, you want to protect yourself in a literate society. You gotta be a lawyer, so to speak, right? I mean, you gotta be able to read the contract. You be able to read the fine print. Well, in electricity, the equivalent is you've got to know that when a yellow box is placed at eye level, you're going to buy it. You might say, and you can't help yourself. There it goes. So somebody like Schwitter's, I mean, this is what they're doing is they're saying, well, look, this is how it works. And you better. This is just pure process of making, working with liquid detritus. You better learn that. You better learn how to do that. So I think design at that sort of very general level, to say our world is designed top and bottom, is also to say, well, our world is written top to bottom. And is it absolutely everything we look at and see and touch and interact with is design. And that's electricity. And you better be electrate so that you can deal with that and participate in it. So I think there would be a case to be made using design in that sense, you know, and I understand what you're saying, though, more specifically, you know, how it's come to mean in a really professional way, it might be problematic, you know. So I don't know if architects don't think of themselves as designers, or...
Increasingly we do, but it was almost, I mean, interior designers, fashion designers, we used to be contemptuous of, but increasingly I think we're all designers in a strange way. But it's a term that's sort of loosely used. One of my colleagues here said, you know, the faculty at MIT divide into two camps, those that get design and those that don't. And I think you know exactly what they mean when they say that. I'm sure you understand what is meant by that. And,
it makes sense.
It's interesting. I had my first client in Paris, very intelligent, advertising, very successful. He advertises films, so he does the shorts for films. It's a film production company, but super smart and, you know, clever man. Wins the Coca-Cola account in France, kind of thing. So he's that quick on his feet, kind of thing.
Right. Nice.
And when he took me on as architect, he said he'd already had two architects. He'd fired them both, and he said to me, having done these two first designs with, you know, good architects, I know what I don't want, and what I don't want is design. Don't trivialize me.
Right.
And it was a very interesting comment from someone who's participating in that world of commerce. You know, that he didn't want the Philippe Stark basins and that kind of you know, manipulation of desire through form. He asked for austerity, materiality, and mass.
Right.
But it was interesting to me. Yeah, so I found myself sort of saying, "Oh yeah, well I don't design."
Right.
But it's made me very suspicious of the term ever since, because there's someone who gets it completely, but is saying enough already.
Right.
You know, the world is full of junk mail. Now this is full of junk object. You know, so people say enough.
Right.
And he wanted to pass it down to some other dignity of being or something. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
I like that.
Yeah. Conclusions? I mean, you're far more experienced. I mean, I look at Christelle as my kind of colleague who's steering me through this. And who's been wonderful at getting Rodanti to dramatically re-edit it every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Which she does with amazing agility.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I mean, you don't need to hear these. I have a lot of comments. I mean, the text is really interesting. Obviously, you have another week and then another additional 2 weeks, and you should work on it because I think it can be improved. And I've no any blue tab here is where you mention design and drop it.
So I'm taking all together.
Because I mean, you are writing it in this program, and I'm thinking also of the people in the SMArchS program who might look at this. I'm thinking of the people coming to the presentation, right? And you have this beautiful description here, definition of what you're talking about. Just put it in, and then when you feel the urge to bring up design and then not say anything about it, you got to figure out what you're going to do. Right? Like you're either going to drop the word or you're going to amplify it. Should a little bit. A lot of this is stylistic. It gets a bit repetitive near the end. I mean, we're sort of reading what we read, and I think that's because it was written later. Right? You can tell the first bits that you gave us a few versions of already. That's much tighter.
Yep.
But in the end, there's this. We're being, dragged back in. I'm a little uncomfortable. You can, be interested to hear your thoughts. I'm a little uncomfortable with this intense focus on his life, because that, in some sense, that counteracts this as any kind of model process, procession, emphasis on process, where you tie it so specifically to his particular life experience. It sort of undercuts the potential for this to be something that is usable, right? But it's so closely tied to his personal biography, which is very interesting. I don't deny it. But as a
I think there are two projects at the same time. The one is the my story thing, which is kind of addressing the singularity in its own terms. So I guess that's what I'm trying to do, because I got intrigued by his life and his work. So I don't. I mean, I said I give you all this information not because I want to prove something, but mostly because I think it's.
There are sections in here though where you are trying to prove stuff about his life. I mean, you do get sort of caught up in. You say you're not interested in the history of the construction, and then you give us the history of the construction. So you kind of are. But that's another point.
But what should I do now?
Well, cut. I just cut, trim, narrow it down a little bit. Because this is, I mean, there are large sections of this that are about his life, and that's not uninteresting. In fact, it's crucial to what you want to do. But it's overwhelming at points. The other things you want to do, in my view. And my other question is, why do you call it, so this is a bigger question, right? Why do you call it performative autobiography? Where does that come from? And what does it mean? And the motivation for this question is, how is this model different from the very conventional understanding of individual authorship? And the artwork, I'm going to talk about artworks, as being this emanation of the individual only.
Because I mean, the merge
Which art historians like me have worked really hard to complicate.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Because I think my argument is not that the merge bow is that it represents his life, but it is his life. I'm saying that by saying performative autobiography, I'm saying that he's performing that the artwork is his actual life. It's not that it tries to. It's not associated with his life. It doesn't represent aspects of his character. It's not that it has this kind of link with his personality. I'm trying to say that the artwork becomes the mechanism of life itself. So it's his morning to night. It's his 24 hours per day endeavor.
So how is that different from the sort of caricature of the obsessive artist? I'm just asking this as a devil's advocate kind of question, right? I'm trying to get at what is different from this versus a very conventional modernist understanding of the author as the sole generator.
I'm not arguing that he's not, actually. No, I'm not saying that he may. I'm not even saying that, okay, I found out who he was, I talked to all of his family and understood that he was this genius who did that because of that intention. Even though I'm convinced, but it's a very small argument. It's not the point to whether he was this inspired genius that had this early intuition and he proved everything that we see now.
I don't read that.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not saying that he was not. Because what I'm saying that this is my reading of his, and what makes him a genius for me is that I read that at the present moment without arguing that it was his intention. It's a fine line, even it is a fine line for me, because I guess it has to do with the implications of saying that Schwitters was a madman and the implications of saying that Schwitters was a genius. Either of these two can be true, but the implication of saying that he was a madman is like, okay, whatever, let's dismiss what he did because it's a curiosity and it has to do with his life, and that's end of story. But I'm saying that I'm choosing to see him as this creative genius because by addressing him in those terms, there's a lot to say about now, and there's a lot of associations to make with the present. And again, I'm interpreting, but not.
See, you are, and you say
exactly.
that you're not interpreting.
But I am, and I'm, I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I mean you're hitting the part of my concerns too. But I'm trying to interpret, but not. Maybe it's not the correct word. I'm not trying to interpret by saying, look, this is the truth, this is what Schwitters did, but I'm trying to explicate in my own terms of what I see significant in him. And it is a fine line, and it's.
But is it in him or is it in the project?
You're saying his inhabiting of this process project.
Yeah.
They're one and the same.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's extensions. I mean, can you think of other artists who sort of inhabit their work in quite the same way? I mean, really, it's unusual because it is a dwelling, and his whole family lived in that with him, you know. But it's very unusual. I mean, there are artists who are surrounded by their work, like Picasso or Corbusier. I mean, Corbusier would get up every morning and paint, and he'd live in a house designed by him. But it wasn't quite the same modality, where the actions you did daily form the environment
Well,
around
I
you.
mean, you could say that some of those Art Nouveau interiors that were designed, or later, that were designed so that everything, the clothes that you wore in the interior, the furniture,
But they
the
were
walls,
complete.
everything's
It was
integrated.
kind of it was a
I agree with
you know it was something there that is very, and still is very unusual. There's very few people
Don't
who.
doubt that.
Yeah.
I want to get at how this is different from the
Yeah,
caricature.
and I think it's a good question because I found myself saying, is he really different than Van Gogh or?
But he cannot. I completely understand, and I
I
have this
would,
question.
if Caroline Jones is in the audience, I would not use the word genius. If I can make some deep
Caroline is there, I
up.
won't speak at all. So, okay.
She'd be super fascinating.
But I think the difference with readers is that the Marchbau, there's no separation in a way between him and the artwork. It's an ever-evolving document of his life. He manifests that he has no artistic inhibitions, and probably he does it. He includes everything. It's like taking snapshots of the people who visit him, because he had a part of the brow of his friend, or the teeth of
And
someone.
that's how you link it into Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's collecting and he's making cases, making folders for everyone. He cannot assume what's going to happen the next day. He can even if he wanted to have an influence on the outcome of the work, he doesn't, because he collects all sorts of diverse materials, and the moment they come to him in a way. It's a very fine line. I agree to say this.
So maybe you just need to articulate very directly at certain points, especially when it starts to get very heavily into his life. Just sort of put in one sentence that sort of steps back from it a little bit and reminds us why we're reading it, right? So that we're not just reading this as.
Yeah.
Just what I'm
Yes,
saying.
and do remind.
Because there's a lot, right? And as I said, near the end, it starts to get repeated almost verbatim in some spots. And that's just an easy edit. I mean, there's.
Greg?
Yeah, well, in terms of the framework of the metaphysics or electricity, I mean, the dream and vision of the avant-garde is to merge art and life.
Yep.
That is, art is not just for artists. That whole division, of course, I mean, this part of the assemblage, right? So the assemblage mode is to overrun every category set up by literacy in its analytical mode to reassert a more holistic orientation of the world. And I would say that, one of the contemporary consequences of SMArchS would be the use of Google Glass to document absolutely every second of your existence. And there are plenty of people that are doing that, as you know. So the way and sort of the middle step would be the situations. I mean, the idea is, poets without poetry. When you go out in the street and you discover, the hubs of atmosphere, in a particular city that you're living in, and so forth, create situations. I mean, that's SMArchS. I mean, that's the whole vision of merging art and life. That's the dream, and electricity makes it happen. It's what I call theopraxesis in my lecture up there. It may be, in some sense, it may be impossible. I mean, all of our philosophers say you can't both live and tell at the same time, but the fact is that in flash reason you can, and you do. And I notice in certain conscience things now, they're actually asking people, if you're wearing Google Glass, turn it off. You're not allowed to record this performance. but I think that's the electrate consequences. The apparatus takes over, makes something that's a singular act, and perhaps a quite of a, marginally, crazy person becomes universalized as a behavior of the society. I think that's, that would be the general answer to, to that idea that what makes his work important is that he did live it, as a singular act, as making art. That's, I think that's the framework for making sense of it.
Yeah, that's great. I found myself asking the same question now, so it's great to somehow.
It is a philosophical question.
One of my colleagues told a story the other day. He went to a bar with a bunch of students, all male, and this is in Spain, and a group of female students came in. They were all about 20, and there was some exchange of Facebook addresses, and the girls then separated from the group and went off and started having a drink on their own, one side of the cafe. And they just disappeared into their phones to look at the Facebook accounts of the 20 guys in the bar. And then he said what was fascinating, he's about 50, he said then as they came over to socialize, they were all targeting 2 or 3 of them. And they weren't the sexy guys, it was the guys who had the most interesting electronic presence. And he was just like, woo! There's something that's changing profoundly in that. So you're the kind of the Facebook stuff that you put out, which is your everyday mets, is becoming the thing that enables you to socialize. It's the measure of your sociability. It's like the troubadour poets. You wrote a letter that was presented at a house, and if it was deemed, worthy, you were allowed to meet the young girl or something. So it was just and it had to have enough formal innovation, enough civility or something to be acceptable. And it's almost like you're in this strange new mode in which your electronic presence precedes you. And I think as teachers we're probably in the same state. In fact, that you're looked up before the class. In fact, the teaching probably is happening before the class and not in the class. It's like it's your other presence. So it's it's definitely the parallels, and I think the parallel at the moment in this document is weak in carrying forward to the digital. Weak in its articulation. It's not necessarily weak conceptually. I think conceptually it could become. It's probably that's a later work, but it is interesting as you get hints of it. You're very good, Greg, at eliciting those links because you kind of go after the conceptual change that's going on, and that makes you then think much more deeply about the electrical situation that we're in. Yeah.
Right, electrate.
Yeah.
Let's get those terms right now.
That's great. I'll talk to you offline perhaps about getting you up here. If you're willing to come and look at the thesis prep class.
Well, it's getting now depending on timing now because but let's talk and yeah.
Yeah, it would certainly be fun. They'd be thrilled because you're writ large in most of them.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It's great. What a terrific experiment. I mean, kudos for taking it on.
Well, you end up beating them over the head to just get them to name a theorist. So in fact, it's not what it should be. It's in fact you're using it as in many cases you're using it as a crutch to just get them to fill in a piece of the kind of background to a thesis. Anyway,
right. Just to realize the resources are there. They don't have to, think these things up off the top of their heads. That they can draw upon these resources, and then it turns out that these resources are terrifically generative.
I appreciate your input to this, Greg. It's really been fantastic, and I'm learning more than anyone. It's wonderful, and I do compliment Rodanti in summarizing some of your quite complex ideas with beautiful clarity, real elegance, and it allows me. I understand you better than I understood you from your books.
There you go. Good work. Well, and I learned too. I mean, this whole Schwitter is just like I learned from the Corbusier book. I mean, this Schwitter's connection is terrific. I'm going to use it as a resource from now on, as a reference. So.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, wonderful.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll be in touch then.
Sure.
Good work.
Bye.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.